All right, welcome to the Stampscapes channel. I'm going to try to do a very fast application of various media, multimedia on this half page. Semi-gloss, piece of cardstock, stamp sketch. All right, now I spent a good deal of time working on these two pieces through the layered dye-based ink application, but I want to test out my, I hesitate to say skills, but my abilities at this point in time using colored pencils. And colored pencils can be a pretty fast media to apply a decent range of values on a piece. Okay, but to assist me, I'm going to go with a little bit of a base layer coat of some dye-based ink, just so I don't have to do everything in colored pencils on here, okay? So this is just a paper towel. And, okay, so with this ink right here, it's a fairly light tone of ink. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish kind of a lighting scheme and a general kind of, I guess coloring scheme to here, meaning, okay, I'm going to retain some areas of light tone in here, light values, including some of the white of the paper. Okay, so I'm kind of adding in this little bit of a swooshy type of background in here using some of this ink. Just, I don't know, just for a little bit of variation in here, just so it's not just so straightforward. I don't know, just like blue or something like that, if that's going to be the color of my sky, okay? Now, I don't have to be super accurate with this base layer coat because it is a fairly light tone of ink. So if you're going to do that, this type of process, you can start off with something darker. You can go just straight on with black or something like that and kind of work grayscale. And I do that sometimes, but I find that it's the easiest to kind of guide your piece through, I don't know, certain types of lighting conditions, coloring, by working very slowly and, I don't know, kind of incrementally, methodically, whatever you want to, describe it as. One value at a time. Okay, so that's practically, it looks really light to me in person right here too. But it just gets the, my established, I don't know, kind of lighting scheme going in here. It's not very defined though, okay? But we can get to that by working a little bit more incrementally darker. Okay, so here's a salvia blue. Okay, my page is fairly moist with that first tone of ink in there. It makes it really easy for me to blend in these darker colors like this. It's not a dark color, but it's darker than the previous one. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I said I was going to use mostly colored pencils, but this is so light. I want to get a little bit more established before I get into, some of those colored pencils. Just, again, because I don't feel like doing everything with them. So I can get a lot more coverage with a dye-based ink in big open areas like this. Just with some other type of media other than, something, very detailed and specific, like a pencil, lead or wax or whatever, colored pencils are made out of. So, in other words, if you have big areas to cover, it's easier to cover with a wider applicator or something, right? Okay, but this is a little bit of a warm blue right here in the Caribbean blue. And that might be the final one that I'll use on here because it's kind of getting into my midtones, and I figure I can get into some detail work using the colored pencils. Okay. right. Okay, I lied a little bit more. Just get a little bit more of a buildup of this Caribbean blue value. So you can see my kind of lighting scheme right here. I have the moonlight kind of shining down in these areas. This area in here could represent a little bit of kind of cloud or something like that in the night sky. All right, so let's go with that. My general kind of color scheme with nighttime types of scenes, oftentimes, not all the time, but it's often just blues, your variations of blue. You can play around with the temperature a little bit. Like I said, this one's a little bit more of a warmer blue. Okay, but let's try to start applying some additional tone in here. This is a fairly smooth paper, okay, in the semi-gloss. So you can apply colored pencils on there. You can't build it up, super thick with colored pencils, just because this paper doesn't really have too much of a tooth to it, but it has enough to where you can apply some on there. Unlike, like a glossy cardstock, which is a lot more sealed off. Another thing you can do too, there's alcohol inks, that you can apply in there, but let's play around with the colored pencils here. All right, so I've established, a lot of tone in here already, so this is just a very light blue, and I can hit some areas in my lighter areas and have it show, okay? It's just this color of blue. It's not, doing too much right here. In fact, I can barely see anything. I'm just kind of, in my mind, I'm just kind of establishing what this would look like on here. I haven't worked with colored pencils too much, in my life. So bear with me a little bit. Kind of hitting some of those shadow areas a little bit. Where I touched my ink up here, it's kind of removing. I see my fingerprint up there, so I'm just kind of filling that in a little bit. All right, so that's a really light blue. Let's just jump, okay? I don't think I'm going to get too much of an application with those lighter tones. So let's just jump into something quite a bit darker. Okay, but I'm just kind of applying a light version of it right here. Let's go underneath the cabin right in here into my darker areas. How about underneath the eaves on my rooftop? Like that. So we're seeing a little bit more developed shadow areas. So on rocks, I'm kind of hitting it, the rocks at the base of the rock. Okay, so there's a little bit of dimension to it. Makes it look like the rocks are a little bit lighter on the top where they're top lit from the moonlight. Okay, there's a little bit of a rock right here. Here's the shoreline right in there. Underneath my cabin over here. How about a little bit of tone on the rooftop? Okay. This tree right here can get modeled a little bit by adding a little bit of tone or a lot of tone on the right side of that tree. Kind of having it a little bit more illuminated on the side of the tree, facing the light source. If there's any question, if there's any question about where you should light and shade something, one of the things starting points is you can just kind of darken the areas of the design that are darker because those represent kind of shadows in the designs themselves. So if you see a bunch of little condensed dots where I've stippled, black ink together to make it look like a denser area, or to represent shadows, you just reiterate it with, your media, be it inks or colored pencils or whatever you happen to be using. It doesn't mean you have to, tone in those areas, but it's a pretty good starting point if there's ever any questions, about it. Because what you're doing is you're deepening the shadow areas on there. And the shadow areas of my designs, the textures, are meant to represent darkness or, just density. All right, so this is coming together okay, I think. I'm using Prismacolors here because they're, because I had them, but I've also heard from some colored pencil artists that they're a little bit more softer of a type of colored pencil than some of the other name brands. Okay. Softness doesn't represent quality or anything like that, and I guess it could, but it's just, it's like personal preference, for these colored pencil artists that use them, I guess. Hey, I'm not one of them. Like I said, I've barely used it. This is a very old set of mine from a long time ago that I just started using. I really kind of love them now in scenes. I used to want to have everything a lot more kind of rich and saturated, but I really like the soft kind of application style of colored pencils, the look of it these days. Not anymore, but just as, an option, in my scenes. And I really like the control, the amount of detail that you can add with them in specific areas. All right, let's see, that was a Copenhagen blue. Let's go to the ultramarine. That used to be one of my favorite oil paint colors. Back in my oil painting days, which were solely school days. I think, when my last oil painting assignment was done in school, I don't think I ever painted anything with oils again. It's hard to paint with oils at home because you have to have a can for your, turpentine coated, soaked rags, that you have to use to clean up everything. So not something that I ever really did again. But I did love it. I love the consistency of oil paints. All right, so we're kind of developing some shadows here and there. And let's test this one out. Blue, violet, maybe a little bit of a different tinge of blue. And I don't see anything too different from the ultramarine. I think after seeing all these blues here, I am getting the urge for some additional color in here, not just blues. So let's adjust accordingly. Let's try some greens in here. You wouldn't see those types of colors at nighttime typically, but this is your world and your little universe whenever you were doing scenes, so you can do whatever you want. We'll try some browns in here and some greens. Let's add a little wood of warmth into some of these trees here. Yeah, that looks pretty cool, I think. How about a touch of warmth? Let's see, maybe not something that. This is like peach or something like that. It's called flesh. Let's go with something a little bit, kind of warmer and lighter. We'll add a little tinge of warmth into our moon. We'll see if we can see any kind of temperature change at all. It's going to be a subtle one. This is very, very light in value here. Hopefully you can see a little bit of a slight warm glow. And we'll put that warm glow on the tops of some of these cabins here and reflecting down here in the water. I'll put some in my trees as well. It's just a little bit of a warm tinge. It's not going to lighten anything. It'll just kind of add a little bit of warmth to it. Possibly. Okay, let's move on to a brown. I'll just give my little cabins a little tinge of that brownish color. Again, in moonlight you wouldn't see that brown in there, but yeah, why not? Let's test it out and see how it looks. I think it looks pretty good on that cabin. I'll use some of it over here too on this one. This one's a little bit darker right here. Okay. A little bit more green, a little bit more kind of intensity. This is not an intense green right here. It's kind of a dull green, but I'm just adding a little bit of a thicker application of it. We can get some of this grassy area to glow a little bit more. When you add analogous colors next to each other, for example, green and blue, what you can achieve sometimes is the illusion of a color glow. All right. Now let's go to black here. I have a little bit too much blue in some of these areas, so I'll go into it and add a little tone of black. We can kind of establish some more, kind of some shadow tones in here, kind of adding these down right now. I can see it's kind of anchoring my objects into the scene a little bit more. You know, just with some additional grayscale. I'm not just using this just for a straight black. I'm using it very lightly. You know, kind of getting a 30-40% gray at most. I'm gonna have to make my sky a lot darker. And I don't want it to be with the colored pencils. I've realized I want to add in some additional tones up there using oh, probably more dye-based inks. All right, let's try to add a little bit more of a warmer green in here just for some kicks. Let's see how that looks in here. It's kind of a shocking kind of temperature addition in here. And again, which we wouldn't normally see. We would add it, we would have all cool tones in there with the moonlight. But this is more of like a fantasy type of scenario here, in terms of the coloring at least. Okay, now let's go back into it. Let's get some grayscale maybe up in the sky. I don't know. I don't necessarily want my sky gray, but I think that we'll move this all the way to black up here. The bottom scene is just so bottom heavy right now in terms of kind of the visual weight. So we'll try to get a little bit of this. Oh, not completely balanced. We won't have it like really dark. I don't know, unless we do make it dark. Let's see how it goes here with the lighter tones, though. And then we'll just work incrementally a little bit darker. Okay, let's go to... let's try this blue here. Okay. Okay, and I have black here. I'm not using it for black, I'm just applying like a gray in there. All right, so something like that. Created a little bit more of a stronger kind of lighting scheme by going darker in a lot of areas. Okay. Starting to achieve kind of a bit of a super saturation here. When I streak some color, you can see where I've just put my finger, the ink comes right off because there's a lot of floating ink on the surface of this cardstock because of the amount of super saturation of the inks that have been laid down on there. Okay, now I'm looking in here. There's a bit of a, just too much. There's too much kind of variation of tone in there. So I'm going to even it out a little bit more with some additional tone. Let's go back to some of our lighter blues. Let's go back to that salvia blue and just add that in there. Just right over the top. It's not going to apply perfectly to our... I need to touch this with something else other than my hand here. But it won't apply perfectly on top of the wax applications of the colored pencils. But it'll kind of smooth things out and stain things enough in here. A little bit of a brighter blue in here. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So I'm applying this over the top of this black in here, which, if you go with a lighter blue over the top of black, it's not going to make that black look lighter, lighter, because these colors are transparent. But it just kind of, you'll introduce more of the, this tone in there. So you'll change the kind of the, whatever ratio, I guess, of colors that's been applied. So it'll influence a little, what we see kind of in the end result. How much of that, I don't know. It depends, I guess. All right, so that is looking a little bit better, I think. And I've darkened it in here because there's some other things that I want to do with, the paint pens. Acrylic paint pens for additional highlights and detail throughout the piece. It's still fairly light in here, but I think that's fine how it is now. Okay, so detailing, highlights. Just in general, my objects are going to be top lit from the moonlight in here. This would probably be really dark in here in reality because the moon's behind everything, but just to make certain things look a little bit rounder. Just as I shaded the bottom of certain objects, I'll highlight the tops of certain things. So things like rocks might get a little bit of a paint, this light blue in this case, right on the top surface. And then if I want to go even lighter and maybe more dimensional, add in some white highlights in here. So this blue one, it's darker than white, so it's going to be a little bit more of a subtle highlight on these objects that I apply it on. And it's going to represent a highlight if I'm applying it on an object that's, some degree darker than this. Okay. And I'll put some of these little highlights down here in the water. Kind of like little glistening highlights on the water's surface. All right, but that water is kind of light right there, so I think I'm going to probably have to move up to my white here as something that's going to be, lighter, to create more contrast in these lighter areas. Like a blue didn't show up right in here, but let's see if a little white shows up, and I think it does. Pretty good right in there. So I'll use this one probably a little bit more sparingly. Unless it looks great, then you can just keep adding more and more, add however much you want. Probably adding a little bit more than I thought I would, but I like the look of it right in here. Kind of, I don't know, it looks like it's established like a second lighting source or something like that other than the moon. You can do your scenes as if you're, like a lighting director, um, for a stage play or something like that, where you have multiple sources, and just you can kind of illuminate whatever you want your audience to look at. You don't have to be confined to the rules of nature, or whatever that would entail. Single light source, with the moon or sun or something like that. Just bring emphasis to whatever you want your viewer to look at. Okay, I think that looks okay. Let's move on to some additional touches in here. From a textural standpoint, I'll work with a little bit of a kind of white pigment ink application here to represent kind of mist and fog, or just suspended moisture in this type of setting, being illuminated by the moon. 100% cotton ball. Kind of smash it down in your cotton ball here. Kind of push some of that ink into there a little bit. You don't want to be applying too much. You want to apply it nice and gradually. Don't have a big blob of ink on here. You want it kind of dry. All right, I'm just starting to apply it in my lighter areas first. Just to kind of get the feel of how much ink is on here, but you can see that little kind of mist in the background like that. I'll apply some of this. You can barely see it right there, but through, continued multiple applications like that, I use a little bit more in the lighter areas like this, okay? Apply too much. You can just kind of wipe some of it off if you apply too much in there. But see, this kind of, you have this mist kind of wrapping around the corner, like about like so. See, it can be coming around this one too. You can have a little bit of a illumination right in here. Like that. Oh, maybe I won't put as much as on this side. And how about a little bit, maybe on the tops of some of these trees. Yeah, it can be capturing some of that moonlight. This kind of softens them up too, and puts a soft light onto them. And I don't do it on everything. I kind of want some crispness to contrast against the softness. And we can have some of it up in our moon as well. There's that owl there, and you can have some, if you kind of direct it very specifically, you can have a little bit of moonlight kind of on one of the wings like that. A little bit of fog right in there. Look at that fog right in there. Kind of, it gives it a different mood, doesn't it? When you put that little mist in there. Look how dimensional that cabin looks, behind a little bit of a fog. And I can put this in here. It kind of makes sense because this area is kind of a little bit more illuminated. So, that the acrylic paint pen highlights in here worked out really well because we're saying that some light is hitting that area. So that when you apply some of this mist that's being illuminated, it kind of makes sense. From a lighting standpoint. Okay, put some right down in here too. Now these reeds look a little bit different. Kind of goes out and, near, far, near, like that. Kind of like that moon kind of illuminated like that a little bit more. Kind of a diffused, soft light. Okay, we have this right now, and I think I'll think about some sort of word stamp to go up here. I think it was gonna go with moonlight as sculpture or something like that. Well, let me take a look and see what I have, and then we'll also get this formatted up into a card, and we'll see what that looks like finished. All right, I've formatted my card into or my scene into a card here. And what I'm doing is I'm going to stamp a quote, upper left-hand corner, just to finish this piece off. Okay, now I've spray sealed this with a spray fixative, which is, just a very light acrylic spray. And workable fixatives are fairly textural, so they allow you to add additional, usually dry media over the top of it, but it should allow me to stamp a word stamp, quote stamp in here just fine. Pardon my head here getting in the way, but I got to get this one right here. Now here's the thing about the sealant. If I get this kind of crooked, I can always just wipe it off and stamp it again because it'll be a little bit sealed off. Yeah, so that this pigment ink just kind of sits on the surface until it dries. So it gives me a little bit of time. All right, but I think I got it reasonably straight. Yeah, there's a little bit of a, upturn to it, but I think it's close enough like that. All right, but anyways, one of the things I was looking at with my other pieces, I thought, I could, stamp kind of multiple words in there too. There's a lot of space in here, but moonlight is sculpture like that. You can do something like piece, or, maybe this piece is too light for that. I wouldn't do like multiple word stamps in here. It might be kind of interesting though, as a kind of a more graphic layout, for a scenario. But anyway, so a lot of tones in there, a lot of colored pencil work. I don't know. I think the dye basting's still on this one. I wanted to play around with those colored pencils, but I think they worked really good on the cabins, kind of doing some little detail, kind of warmer temperatures amongst the cool temperatures. But I think this is such a large piece. I think the colored pencils did the dye bastings did the bulk of the work in here, 80%, and then the colored pencils, over the cabins, and that slightly warm tinge in there, that was really good for the colored pencils to do. And you can still manipulate it more if you want to. And like I said, this workable fixative is down there, so if you wanted to add in a little bit more tone here or there, you can do that. Something that might be kind of interesting, is some of the alcohol inks in here. If you want to just kind of tweak your shadows a little bit more, you can do that. Or your colors a little bit more. The alcohol inks go on transparent, and they really do allow you to, with the lighter tones of alcohol inks, of which there are many, you can go in and tweak things accordingly. A little bit more green in here, something like that. You can do a very subtle version of it, like something like this, which is similar to that pale green that I used. Or did I use that one? I used the Caribbean blue in here, but you can go and add a little bit more like green in here, if you so choose. You can go in with your blender pen too, and kind of blend your alcohol inks around too if you wanted to. Just a little bit more of an earthy green. Maybe that's a little bit too much. So I'll just go in with a blue like that. Just kind of blend that out a little bit. Kind of spread it around and dilute it a touch. All right, but anyway, there is our little scene. Trying to think if there's anything else that I want to add in here. You can always add like a little foreground night fisherman. That'd be kind of interesting. I can do a little kayaker in here. That might be kind of interesting too. I don't know. Night fishing. But anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comments section.